And now we move into a session, final session of today, which is to hear an overview of how, which is what has been a big part of my day-to-day for a large part of this year. Started with a phone call from Chris Williams. I remember it was one of those ones where you remember where you're stood, and Chris Williams, PI for the Oxford trial, saying, we've got a bit of an issue. We need to set up a vaccine trial in a week. I need your help. And we haven't put the pen down, as it were. So Jayne has been alongside me with all of that, and very much more involved in the operations, and her and Andrew and Orod, who are both PIs for some of the other trials, are going to talk us through what that experience has been like in the last year and what it means for the future. So over to you guys.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm really delighted to have this opportunity today to introduce the presentation. We have been living and breathing vaccine research for several months, along with all our colleagues across Wales, and we make no apologies for remaining as excited about it as we were at the beginning, despite the trials and tribulations. So today we're hopefully going to provide you with a strategic overview of the approach to delivery in Wales, and our presenters, Dr. Andrew Freedman and Dr. Orod Osanlou, who are also our Wales lead PIs for the programme, will be sharing with you their experiences, not only as being a lead PI for Wales, but their experiences in the study, specific study delivery in this programme in various locations across Wales. Next slide, please. So just to provide you with some context in which we were operating, really, as it's been, referred to throughout the programme today, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and we were operating in a space of a whole portfolio of urgent public health research, which was the UK government priority. And Wales did an excellent job at this. We were at the forefront of treatment and care, searching for those treatments that would improve the experience and outcomes for patients with COVID-19, both in a community setting and in a hospital setting. But this was actually taking all our delivery resources at the time. Alongside that, the race for the global race for a vaccine for COVID-19 was already well progressed. And the UK Vaccine Task Force was established in May last year with a remit to develop, secure supply and deploy vaccine across the UK. That Vaccine Task Force, did indeed secure supply 100 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine back in as early as May last year, 2020. The other thing that happened around this time was that the first UK vaccine study was delivered, the Oxford AstraZeneca study. We in Wales participated in the phase 2/3 of that study. And as Nikki referred to, Dr. Chris Williams, our Wales PI, led the team from an Iron Bevan University Health Board, and worked collaboratively with colleagues from Cardiff Clinical Centre for Trials Research and ourselves in Health and Care Research Wales to really provide the bedrock of learning that supported our ongoing development of the vaccine research delivery programme in Wales. The other thing that happened at this time was that the UK via the NHR rolled out the National Vaccine Registry, and this provided opportunity for potential participants and the public to express their interest, express their willingness to participate in research and sign up to be mailed about research that was happening in their region and sign up to that research. Next slide, thanks. So in terms of the milestones and our development of the programme, so obviously, by the time we had completed the Oxford study, there was a pipeline of about 8 to 10 potential vaccine candidates, which we were expected to be supporting across the UK in order that we secured the supplies the government had indicated they wanted. So the Vaccine Task Force very quickly recognised that new infrastructure was needed and made available £13.5 million for and invited regions to bid against that money to secure additional infrastructure such as facilities, equipment, staffing costs to ensure that our vaccine delivery infrastructure was robust. We successfully applied for funding in Wales, and alongside we consulted with our community with experts in the areas around, how would we introduce a model of working. Professor Chris Fegan, Professor Sue Bale were really instrumental in those early conversations and setting up our model of working. We entered into a partnership agreement with Public Health Wales so that they could act as a lead site, which has been described to you earlier in the All Wales contracting and costing model that we delivered subsequently. We appointed our 2 Wales lead PIs, who obviously you can see on your cameras left and right today. And they've never looked back, I'm sure. And we also conducted a really rapid assessment of our actual facility so that we could gauge, what additional resources they needed to set up vaccine research, what proportion of this funding we needed, how we'd allocate it, etc. The other reason for the regional approach was really directed from the UK government leadership, in the sense that they was trying to secure vaccine for the UK. And they really wanted a responsive, efficient model of working in terms of negotiating with sponsors. So they really needed a very detailed assessment of all the regional capabilities, and it needed to be fed through very quickly. And they didn't have the time or the capacity to deal with multiple sites in every country. Next slide, thanks. So this is briefly an overview of our model that was developed. And this was, we had to provide this to secure the funding that we did subsequently win. And it was assessed by the NHR and agreed that we could go forward with this model. We basically identified 4 facilities across Wales, as mentioned. We had a panel of expertise providing a vaccine hub or programme board, if you would like to define it in that way. And we also had a list of national functions which we could provide in terms of study delivery. I won't read them all out because I think it's very clear for you, you can read the slide for yourself. But I would like to acknowledge the membership of that delivery hub. So we had membership from our specialty leads in Wales, Dr. Anne Harrod-Davies and Dr. Andrew Carson-Stevens, in terms of specialty leads for infection and primary care respectively. We had expertise in pathology. Dr. JC Sinha was really fundamental in delivering an all Wales view of the lab capabilities everywhere. Beth Ann Tranter for the same in terms of pharmacy. We had our colleagues from Cardiff Clinical Centre for Trials Research, Professor Kerry Hood and team, who were really supporting us with the trials management and development. And we had Felicity Waters, who led the communications programme, which was really crucial to the reaching out to those people across Wales and engaging them in the studies that we wanted to engage them with. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Freedman now, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about the lead PI role and the experience in the specific studies in Wales. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jane, and thanks for setting the scene. It's certainly been an amazing experience, one I've never had before. I think all of us would say we spent far too much time on Zoom and Teams at various meetings. So just to briefly mention those, we have a weekly hub meeting, Wales Vaccine Trial Hub meeting. Jane's talked about the hub. The UPH panel that I've not been involved with, but I think Nikki is actually responsible for selecting the specific studies that have been badged as UPH and prioritised for support across the UK in the structure that Jane has described. And then there are a couple of other groups that meet nationally and NIHR led. So there's an ops group that I think Jayne, you and also Nikki join each week. I'm not a member of that one, but there's a separate group which has changed its name a few times. I think the Study Placement and Response Team. I'm not sure what the latest name is, but there's some overlap, I think, between those two groups. That second one that I do attend takes a more strategic approach, I think, to the different studies, but there's definitely some overlap. On top of that, we are all involved in terms of our individual trials. So Orod is PI for the Novavax study, and he will have regular PI calls, meetings with the chief investigator for that study, and the same with the Janssen one, which I'll talk about shortly. We also, for the Janssen one, we have a PI WhatsApp group, which is forever buzzing at all times of day and night, as far as I can tell. There have been lots of issues with these studies that need to be resolved rapidly, and so it's been very useful, as much as we don't like spending all our days and sometimes evenings and weekends on Zoom meetings. It's certainly a very efficient way of organising this endeavour. And on top of those meetings, we've also have regular meetings, obviously, for site selection and meetings with the sponsors and the CROs. So I'll hand over now to Orod, who's going to talk about the Novavax study. If I can just advance a slide. Wait a minute.
Thank you, Andrew, and thanks, Jayne, for the introduction to everything as well. So yes, so we selected Novavax to be at Wrexham, and this was selected because Wrexham has a large population, excellent transport links, and as Jayne describes, there's a drive to deliver, research throughout Wales. So we're very pleased to be able to deliver UPH studies throughout different parts of Wales, including Wrexham. Once we selected Wrexham, then we had to set the study up within 10 days. 10 days. So, I'm used to setting up trials within over months. So this was a huge challenge, but we had a really, really good team. So, as Jayne describes, there's so many different people: Public Health Wales, Healthcare Research Wales level, hub team, central team, booking team, pharmacy, labs, comms teams. Then BCUHB level, we've had the research and innovation team, we've had the execs, and there's so many others. There are over 120 staff on the delegation log, but then when you factor in all these other people, it's at least double that. So it's been a tremendous team effort, and thank you to everybody who's been involved. So this picture here is our socially distanced picture on day one at the North Wales Clinical Research Centre. So just as a brief example of one of the challenges, we had our first participant scheduled in for 9 AM on the 2nd of November, but our IMP didn't arrive until 9:30. That's just one example of the many different challenges that we've had to deal with on a day-to-day basis and just thinking on our feet. And that's one of the many reasons why these PI WhatsApp groups are always pinging. So we had a carousel where participants would come in, they would have all of their trial procedures, and then they would be discharged, and it took around 1.5 to 2 hours for each participant. And I've done vaccine trials before, but when you're looking at small numbers, it's relatively easy to handle, but it's a huge challenge when you have to maintain effective social distancing and effective flow when you've got up to 60 people or more going through a relatively small centre in a day. But the team are brilliant, and we learned very quickly and became efficient. So we recruited 490 participants, which was 25% above our target. And if you think that each participant would over 12 months need 6 to 12 attendances, then overall that's thousands of participant interactions. And there were other challenges that we had to deal with. So, for example, I was given 1 week's notice to quality control 25,000 pages of ECRF, and I was told it was only me that can sign it off. So there were so many different challenges that we had to deal with, but a lot of these challenges and data queries had very tight timelines, and that's because as we know, this is a very fluid and moving situation, and our responsiveness was critical to help establish the vaccine efficacy and pending MHRA approval as well. I'm sure Andrew will also talk about this, but we've had to unblind 50% of our participants to enable them to have a deployed vaccine once they're eligible. So for people who have been unblinded, they haven't been unblinded, they've been enrolled in a crossover trial, which is great, but it does mean that we now have to see a lot more participants interaction, so it has increased our workload significantly. But overall, you know, Novavax has been a tremendous success story. You can see some of the numbers I've listed here. We've been one of the highest recruiting sites for what is thought to be the biggest ever vaccine trial conducted in the UK. It's been a remarkable achievement considering where we were at before, especially compared to other established sites who've got clinical research facilities. And I also believe this has been the largest study in terms of recruitment numbers and commercial income for any study in BC-UHB history. And importantly, the population of Wrexham have benefited from access to experimental medicines on a very large scale. And we're also proud that we've significantly contributed to the data that has shown that Novavax has high efficacy against COVID-19. And it's also been a proof of concept that, you know, in North Wales and Wrexham, we can deliver these large-scale clinical trials, and we're using this as a platform to see how we can expand for future as well. So that the data has been written up and being submitted for publication also, and we're expecting that to get MHRA approval very quickly, so that we have another weapon in the global fight against this pandemic. Thank you. So I'll hand back over to Andrew now, who'll give an overview for Janssen.
Oops. Yeah, thank you very much, Orod. I'm not going to repeat what Orod has said. There have been lots of challenges, obviously, and some of them are common to this study. So we hosted this study at the CRF in UHW Cardiff. So this is the Janssen Ensemble 2 trial, and there's actually a separate trial that started earlier than this one, looking at just one dose of the same vaccine that has already reported good efficacy, and it's been approved, this vaccine, in the States, although not yet by the MHRA, as a single dose vaccine. So this is rather like the Oxford vaccine. It's a human adenoviral vector vaccine. This, as I said, was 2 doses, 8 weeks apart, comparing with placebo. This is categorized as a GMO IMP, and so we had to obviously institute SOPs to handle it as a GMO, but fortunately the GMO regulations were relaxed because of the COVID pandemic, so we didn't have to go through all the committee stages that would normally do in setting up a trial with a GMO. We opened in late November. It's a global study, 30,000 in total. It's now closed, 6,000 of those in the UK. Unfortunately, we started later than we'd planned because of all sorts of IT difficulties. The IT systems, there were 10 separate IT systems that were required for this study, over complex, I think, and some of them weren't up and running in time. So through no fault of our own, the start was delayed. We ended up recruiting at 224. Our initial target was 333, but we had a tight window after which we didn't have CRF availability. We also recruited, because this started before there was any licensed vaccine that was available, we ended up recruiting a lot of healthcare workers who actually, as Orod said, needed to be unblinded quite quickly once they were offered an NHS vaccine. So we actually did lose quite a number of participants. Well over 50% had to be unblinded over the some of them before they even had the second dose of the vaccine. We had 4 confirmed cases of COVID in the study in our participants, but actually they were all between the first and second doses. we're now just entering a crossover phase so that the placebo arm of this study are going to be offered a single dose of the Janssen vaccine, but we can't do that at the moment because the vaccine's been paused because of the association with the very rare thrombosis, as with the AstraZeneca vaccine. So we're waiting to hear what's going to happen. Sorry, I just need to get the clicker back up. There we go. To move on. So this slide really just, and I'm not going to go through all of these, lists the achievements and benefits. So in terms of what we've done, it's been a fantastic venture and really successful. We've recruited so far over 1,100 participants into the trials. For 3 trials, there's a new one just starting up in Swansea, the Medicago trial. As Orod mentioned, they've been set up very rapidly. We've had to ensure data quality and sign off the data very rapidly. Orod in Wrexham has been brilliant. He exceeded the target recruitment number. I think it's been a learning experience for everyone, and I'd like to give a real big thank you to everyone who's helped. Certainly the Cardiff team, obviously the Cardiff CRF team have been absolutely fantastic, but also the central team, the booking team, Jayne and Nikki, of course, who've been absolutely instrumental in leading this. I think just going through that list, jumping to the bottom, I think it will provide a legacy for infrastructure and for setting up studies, large-scale studies, much bigger than I think most of us have been used to at short notice, and that's going to help in the longer term. And I think I'll stop at that point because we're running out of time and there may be some questions. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you to the 3 of you. And, you know, as Rachel said earlier, we've worked together. Well, I've met Jayne in person, but we've worked together, Andrew and Orod, all through the last year without actually having physically met. And that is testament to our teamwork, as well as the change we've all had to make in terms of more virtual working and team working and Zoom and all that. So as many of people on this call will have also done, we've seen a massive shift, and not just in terms of our demonstrative ability to deliver on a rapid and you know, collective, coordinated way across Wales. So thank you both, and to Jayne as well, obviously, for all of that.